Greg and I'm one of the team here at Pilgrim Community Church. Thanks so much for taking time out of your day to join us. In John's Gospel, chapter 1, we read, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him not anything made that was made. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we have seen his glory, glory as of the only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth." God and his creation, the Word and flesh. Jesus and everything that was made. There is no separating stuff from God. God is not on one side and stuff on the other side. It is not helpful to think of God as on one side, representing everything that's supernatural or spiritual, and material stuff on the other side, representing everything natural. Why? Because everything that was made, that stuff, was made by God. That means that they are woven together in ways that we can't always understand or explain. It is, in many respects, a mystery. But it doesn't just end at God's making of the stuff. In Colossians chapter 1 verse 15 we read that he, that's Jesus, this Word become flesh, is the image of the invisible God, the thing that we cannot see. We see Jesus, but cannot see God, but one is the image of the other. The firstborn of all creation, for by him all things are created, in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. All things were created through him and for him, and he is before all things. And this, really importantly, he holds all things together. So, the very existence of material things, of the natural world and universe, depends not just on God for its making, but for its continual being. It's not right to say, as we've thought for a very long time, that spiritual things, which we usually think of as invisible, supernatural, even pure, it's not right to say that spiritual is good and the natural stuff is bad. These dividing our life, dividing the world, dividing ourselves into two, often called dualism, it's not useful, it's not helpful, and it's not entirely accurate. No one would turn to God and say that everything you have made, God, is bad, not when he said repeatedly it was good. Creation, things, nature, flesh, it's the stuff of God. He made it. He keeps it. It would not exist were it not for him. Jesus, the living Word of God, is forever woven into it into him. Visible or invisible, supernatural or natural, seen or unseen, it's all of his creation. It's possible then, at least in part, to understand something of God through what has been made. It's stuff, and if stuff is good enough for God to reveal himself, not just himself, but his plan and his purpose, then it's not something that we should despise. God brought his ultimate revelation through stuff, flesh. Jesus become flesh. In theology, it's called the incarnation. Jesus, the Word become flesh, is the perfect union between spiritual and material. His message was always to a perfect bond between spiritual and material. Last time we said that he spoke more of money than he did of prayer. And in every story that Jesus communicated to us, it was a perfect union between spiritual, material, a spirit stuff message. And the good news for us is that we're not divided into important and unimportant parts. God cares about the whole you, spirit and body. You're not just a spirit aching to be free of your body so that you can return to your more pure or natural state of spirit. That's not how God made us. That's not how he revealed himself. It is not his plan for us. Death itself is conquered by the resurrection of the body. We are saved, spirit, soul, and body. God cares about you, inside and out, visible, invisible. You, the human being, you are a wonderful, mysterious combination of body and spirit that cannot and should not be easily separated and divided. Our bodies, in short, are not the enemy of God. Though often our appetites and our cravings lead us astray, it is not the body that stands as diametrically opposed to all things God and supernatural. It's too easy and flat out wrong, really, to think of spiritual or supernatural stuff belonging to God on the one side and natural material stuff belonging to us or the world or nature on the other. Now, Peter thought like this. Peter thought that spiritual stuff belonged to people like rabbis, teachers of the law, spiritual leaders, and natural things like fishing, that belonged to ordinary people like him. Let professional religious people deal with religious stuff. Let professional fishermen deal with natural stuff, like fishing. Jesus, however, wanted to show Peter that he was thinking about this all wrong. Of course, Jesus himself had a physical, natural, if you like, trade. He was a carpenter. He dealt with stuff, wood. He was living as a human being on earth, getting hungry, needing sleep, walking around, needing clothing, dealing with all that you and I deal with on a day-to-day basis. Now, Peter owed Jesus. Jesus had just healed Peter's mother-in-law, and in that part of the world at that time, returning a favour was a really important part of how society works, as it still does in many, many places. When Jesus came along then with not so much as a by your leave, climbs into Peter's boat and asks for his help, Peter could hardly refuse. What do you need my boat for, Rabbi? Well, it was about to become a floating pulpit for Jesus to deliver a message to a whole bunch of people standing on the shore. Peter agrees. The boat goes out. Jesus sits down in the boat to show his authority. He's the boss. He's the chief. And he preaches a very spiritual, religious sermon, because that's what spiritual religious people do. Fine, message over, favour returned. Let's get back to shore. I'm a busy man. I'm a tired man. But then the carpenter Rabbi Jesus, who knows nothing about fishing or boating, needed Peter's help to get out, gives orders now to the professional fishermen on how and where to catch fish. Peter was knackered. They'd been fishing all night long and caught nothing. I'm in no mood for your preacher jokes, Jesus. Let's just get back to shore. You've delivered your message. They'd been working at night because fish in the Sea of Galilee feed at night. At daytime, they hide under the rocks. And that's when they come out at night time, making the catching of fish so much easier at night. They also gather together in huge shoals along the shoreline where the oxygen-rich fresh water from the River Jordan pours into the lake. A fisherman from around there once wrote, "We've seen the shoals at Ein Baradei and at Ein et Tabaga, so great as to cover an acre of the surface, and so compact together that one could scarcely throw a stone without striking several fish. The hand net is thrown out with a whirl. It sinks down in a circle, enclosing a multitude of fish, and these are then gathered in by hand while the net lies at the bottom. And this was one of the methods that Peter would have used to fish. Peter was an expert at this stuff, as were all of his fishermen friends and family. No landlubber from the highlands of Nazareth was going to tell him how to fish. Casting nets, broad daylight, ridiculous. Listen, Chief, my boys and I, we're professionals. We know where the fish feed. It's along the shore, and the best time to catch them is at night. This is daylight. That's why we were out on the lake all night. We're not stupid. We know what we're doing. We have just worked the well-known fishing areas and we've caught nothing, meaning there's nothing to be caught. We're now dead tired. And I've already stayed up for a few more hours than I was planning to, helping you to teach the law to that smelly bunch of people on the shore there. I should be in my bed. You rabbis think you know everything about everything, and now you're ordering me to fish in the daylight in deep water? Well, let me tell you, you don't know about fishing. But since you're so sure of yourself, let me show you. We'll see who knows about fishing. And then the scripture records. And when they'd done this, they enclosed a great shoal of fish. And as the nets were breaking, they beckoned to their partners on the other boats to come and help them. And they came and filled both boats, so that they both began to sink. Oops. Now who knows about fishing? Well, Jesus does, because he made it all. If anyone knows about stuff, it's the maker of the stuff. What shocks Peter more than the miraculous catch, as it's often called, is that he is suddenly faced now with a man who has clearly made a real choice between God and stuff. Peter has spent his whole life waiting for the jackpot, like a stock trader who gets up every morning and deals in stocks, just waiting for that one moment, that one deal that will make him rich, like winning the lottery. He's waited his whole life for that one jackpot that will mean he and his family can maybe retire, they can be secure, his children, his grandchildren. This is the greatest haul of fish that he has ever seen in his life, even heard about in his life. That will be enough to change his life. But more than that, here is a man, a carpenter rabbi from the highlands of Nazareth, who seems to have some kind of golden touch, magical touch when it comes to fishing. Why is this man wandering around penniless telling people about God when he could be rich? He could even partner with me. We could be both rich. This man clearly cared about God and about people more than he did about money, about mammon, about material things. So Peter began to rearrange the furniture in the back of his mind. Now at this point, instead of calling Jesus chief, teacher, boss, as he had been doing before, he then calls him Lord for the first time. Lord. The teacher becomes Lord. He doesn't call him great fisherman. He doesn't call him great potential money maker. He calls him Lord. Run away, Jesus! I'm a sinful man, and you don't need to be around sinful men. David did the same thing after he slept with Bathsheba the fox and couldn't believe that God still wanted anything to do with him. In fact, he said in the Psalms that no matter where he went, even if he made his bed in hell, which was his poetic way of describing what he'd just done with his affair, in his affair with Bathsheba. No matter where he went, even making his bed in hell, there was God. It's not God on one side, behind that veil, and we on the other. It is not spiritual stuff on one side and material stuff on the other. God brought his greatest revelation in a human body. And if that says anything, it says that you, all of you, you're what matters most. And all of you matters. Peter, don't worry. I still need your fishing expertise. You're going to be now a fisher of people. God bless you guys. Thanks so much for taking the time to be a part of what God's doing at Pilgrim Community Church. Look forward to speaking again with you next week.